Okay, so the roll collar, Winifred Aldrich, roll collar, classic roll collar, she calls it, page 158, diagram 12. So if we look at the diagram, we can see here. So it's, first of all, this is our flat drawing of it. And here's our diagram of the pattern underneath it. Have a little look at it. And there's our instructions. So there is another draft on this page that we are ignoring, and the first set of instructions. We're just coming down here from the classic roll collar. So you can see it's basically going to concern the front bodice, and we're going to build up a little bit here. So there is one first instruction which I'm going to ignore. She says, before drafting collars with lower revers, make a 0.6 neck dart, which is true. It's a good thing to do. Otherwise, there's a little kind of gape on the collar. But we're just going to skip that because it creates a lot of extra work, and we just want to kind of get through the main concept of how to do a roll collar, and we're not physically making this collar up. Okay, so first line really of our instructions then is mark buttonholes and add button stand. So staying in line with our kind of first steps of a garment, we would be looking at the length, bottom of it, we'd look at the top. And as I said before, on the top of a garment is the neckline, but attached to the neckline is the button stand. So button stand comes in early in terms of one of your first things you do. If you don't put the button stand on before you do the collar, you have to redo the collar, so it's annoying. So put the button stand on first. So what I'll do there is I'll make my button stand 2 centimeters. So it's kind of big, but it means that yours in half scale is 1, and it's kind of reasonable in terms of your half scale diagram. So it's not a tiny little measurement. So first thing, add your button stand. Then she says mark point 1 at break point. Mark neck point 2. And the next thing she says, extend the front shoulder line. So when she says mark point 1 at the break point, she doesn't give you a place to do it. So that means it's your choice, it's the designer's choice. Where are we making the break point? So where do we want the lapel to come down to and start, essentially? So yeah, so you would be making that choice as a designer. In this case, we're trying to follow our flat drawing there and make a reasonable choice as to the position of that. So I'm going to just draw a line there. And position 2, she's saying, is here. And then she says extend the shoulder line. So here is our shoulder line. And she says extend. You have to look at the picture to see which direction, because we could be extending this way, but she's coming out this way. So we're extending out this direction. This bit is the tricky bit of the draft, the next bit. She says place the reversed back to, so she means the back bodice block, the reversed back bodice block to the front bodice at the neck point. So here is, this was my front bodice block, here's my back. Okay, so this is our neck point here, and this is our neck point here. And these are our shoulders, and our shoulders reversed. Like that, okay?
Point to point.
You're gonna take this, and it's gonna be flipped, but watch this all the way through before you start trying to do it, okay? So we're going to flip it, and we're going to place it here at the neck point. But what angle do we place it at? You can change the angle as to which way you trace it. But one is going to make a flatter collar, one's going to make more of a stand collar. So for this, it's very handy. She gives us a very exact position. And that's very helpful, because if you're going to make the collar yourself and you're trying any which angle, you might not like the result of your collar. So she's giving us kind of classic. And how she does that is she tells you to measure down here 8.5 centimeters. So if I measure down here 8.5, I know where to swing this point to. Then I can trace that section. Okay, so it's kind of a complicated enough way to get this one line. She could tell you, she could make it a little easier like when I was learning colours, it would just say throw back a line. So we just come here and we just draw a line. But when we drew the line, then you'd make up the collar and it might not sit very well. And so you had to make loads of collars before you realize, oh, a line at this angle is better than a line at this angle. And so in a way this is fussy, but it really does give you a nice starting point for your collar, you know. So it's kind of strange. And she's also then, that's giving us the measurement of the back. So what I used to do is they say, just throw back a line and then I measure the back neck on it and put that measurement on it, you know. But then I don't really know how that's going to sit. So if I take this and I use Winifred, so I've done a dotted line. I've measured down 8.5 and kind of done a dotted line here so that wherever the shoulder hits. So I'm swinging that down until it hits that point there. You see? And now like this line that I threw back, I don't know what it's like. This one I know. It's tried and tested, it's a good starting point. It's probably going to give me a classic standard colour, which is generally what you're trying to do, so it's good. And all you're doing is tracing that bit from it. That's all we need this for. Just, that's the tricky bit. Once you have that, now we're going to be kind of creating this rest of this collar bit here. Mark back neck point 3. Which is here. Okay, I'm circling the positions. And 2 to 4, she says, equals 2 centimeters, and 3 to 5 equals 3 centimeters. So she's telling you to come out here from position 2 centimeters, and then she's telling you to come out 2 centimeters from 2 to 4, 3 centimeters from 3 to 5. These are full scale measurements. This is going to create our roll line, the line where this rolls along, you know. And from 4 we're going to draw our break line, which is the line that comes straight down here, which is this line here on the collar, where it breaks. I use that term where it breaks from the garment and folds back to become a collar kind of. So this is their break line. All right, so we have our break line, and you can see she has a dotted line. It's a very important line. I don't usually dot it because it's kind of that important, but I can dot that part. So break line, which a lot of the terminology would call this the break line, that the roll line. So then she says 5 to 6 is 6 centimeters. So again, you look on your diagram, where is 5 to 6? It's coming out from here. So this is 5, position 5. I need to find 6, which is this direction, and it's 6 centimeters. So it's position 6 and it's 6 centimeters away. So I extend along. Find position 6, which is here, and then she says 7 is 0.5 down. So, or she says 6 to 7 equals 0.5. So position 6, position 7, you can see is down from it to get to 7, and that's 0.5. So I measure my 0.5 down 0.5 centimeter, and I draw this line. So that's just tightening in the back. So this part here is the back of the collar. It's this part here. All right, and she's just taking it in. If you don't take that in a little bit, it tends to flare out just a tiny bit. So she's nipping that in the bud and getting it a little bit tighter right there. That's what that's doing. All right. If you forgot that, you'd probably just see it on the result of your collar. It'd be a bit sort of a little bit excess there. And then draw in roll line 5 to 4, which I actually already did. Sorry, dotted that. She's just saying that there. And break line. So I've just done that already. And then draw in style line from 7 to 1. So this is now position 7. Here was just below 6. And 1 is here. So I am drawing in my style line there. So again, just notice that all of the different terms. The style line is the one that you draw in, and you do your best In this case, you're doing your best to imitate the image on the diagram and our flat drawing. But if it was your design, you could decide you want it to be whichever way you want it. It could come out and back in. It could be slim. It could be whichever way that you have designed it. So style line being the line that you can change. So coming out, and coming back in to that front there. All right, something like that. I feel like that's a little fat. I might slim it in a little bit. You can, like that, like me, you can have a go, and then you can look at it and be like, oh, I think that was maybe a little fat. Maybe it's coming a little more. Like that. Might be a little better. You can compare it to the diagram here. All right, and be like, yeah, I think that's a little better. Look, to me, the first one looked like it was going to go out and back in, so it would look like it would be kind of coming out here a little. I don't think that was right. Okay, so that's essentially it. So one last thing on this is the facing. So there is a facing. So it's important to understand, like, this is a velvet and this is satin. So obviously, you know, this is coming actually and is only the facing. Can you see that? So there's one fabric here for the jacket, which is velvet, and then the next bit here, actually what you're seeing is actually the facing. So the facing is very important. Now it could be the same fabric, could be fine, but it's just important to distinguish between on this, that you have one side of the collar here, which is part of the jacket, and the other side, which is just a small slim piece, that's the facing that's folding back, and the facing then gets attached to lining if it's on a jacket. So we draw in the facing so that we can then trace it off separately. So the facing comes here, 5 centimeters back from position 2, and 5 back from the center front line. So I kind of draw it up there, and then I smooth it in a kind of curved line into the, and when I do a facing, I shade it in so I can see which part is the facing, and it goes right through this collar. So can you see the way the green lines that have, that's the facing, that's the bit here that's in satin. All right, and then there will be a second piece that includes all that, but then comes all the way out here, and that's the velvet piece. So you have 2 separate pattern pieces for the front. I will then trace them off so you have maybe the example of the 2, but that's essentially the construction completed. Okay, I forgot one important thing. So when I've traced this, you see this is the facing, trace this facing piece, and there is an extra little allowance that you need to add to the edge of the style line of this collar, and that's for this kind of rolling over effect. So the collar, when it sits like this, if we just had, say, the velvet and the satin coming together like that, you might see a bit of the velvet peeping out, you know, or else you'd see the seam. So they add a little extra to this one, which is the facing, 3 millimeter. It depends actually on the width of the fabric, okay, like the thickness of the fabric, should I say. So if it's a thick fabric like coating or whatever, you might add 0.5. This is full scale measurements. If it was finer fabrics, you might just add 0.3. But you add it along the style line, and so because it's then a few millimeters bigger, it turns in, and if I hold it that way, you'll see there's a tiny rim of the satin on this side, so you really don't see any of the other one, the velvet, is peeping out. And this is done on several different colors. It's the top collar. You add it to the top collar typically. In this case, it's the facing for our roll collar. So it would look something like this. It comes up, I'll do it in red, and it comes out 0.3 for you guys, say, I'll do 0.5, and it just comes from, you know, so you would go like that and measure your 3 millimeters all the way along. It goes back into nothing here, okay, it's just for this part of the style line. After that, it goes back to nothing. And yeah, you just draw it in. Have a look. The staggered line, or the dotted line, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so she has a dotted line, always is the starting point, and then the final line is the solid line. So she's showing you there that she's added a few extra millimeters.
Okay.
Yeah. Right, so this is only on your facing piece. When you trace off the body piece, it won't have that on it. A bit sleepy this morning, I started tracing off an incorrect line, but you can see they are your pattern pieces, the facing and then the front bodice or the front body piece. So you have your center front line there. It's only short. It would be good practice to put a proper longer straighted grain line in there. So you could measure over and put a longer grain line. Okay, you should have a piece like that, minus this, and then have your labeling, putting the 4 lines there to represent. You put your name, what garment it is, so you can just call this roll collar, what piece it is, so this is the bodice piece, that's the facing, and then how many we're cutting. And we are cutting 2 because she doesn't show the back, but there is a seam down the back here on the roll collar. It's one of the only collars that has a seam down the back, actually. Okay.